Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And David, very exciting riff we have today. What are we going to talk about?
Your new speakers, Mike.
Oh, we are. We're going to talk about my brand new, well, not quite brand new, but my new to me speakers.
Yes.
New to me speakers. And speakers, we see now all of a sudden it's getting dangerous territory because you know how much I love my isobarics and my Saras and my cans.
Yes.
So what have I done?
You never stop talking about them.
Never stop talking about them. So what have I done? I bought the most diametrically opposite pair of speakers I could possibly get.
Yes, which you'll never stop talking about.
Which I haven't stopped talking about, certainly. So here we go. I have a pair of Quad ESL 63 loudspeakers.
Now, what did you used to say about quad owners, Mike?
Probably not really repeatable on air,
Right.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
because, for sort of politically correct 21st century reasons, generally.
Yes.
But yeah, no. To be fair, probably
it wasn't all complimentary, was it?
It wasn't all complimentary. No, a bit scathing, really. Tend to be a bit sort of snobby about their kit and snobby about classical music.
Fuddy-duddy.
Yes, that kind of thing.
So can I say that about you now?
No, because we still listen to Rush on my Quad Electrostatics, which has never been done before. I'm sure no one's ever listened to any rock music at all on Quad Electrostatics. But I think that's because they were so expensive back in the day that the kids, who I am one of them, couldn't afford the electrostatics, so you ended up with a pair of sort of Roy Edens or something instead. But actually, if they could have afforded it, they would have realised they're really great rock music speakers, and classical music speakers, and classical music speakers, and jazz speakers, and they will work with any genre of music,
except most of them,
except ones which have bass and treble.
Yeah, so I've never seen you as a reggae fan, and now I know it's true. So.
It's so weird, isn't it? Because we were talking, actually, in all seriousness, we were talking about this earlier. They do some things amazingly brilliantly, and yet they're fundamentally flawed, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which is the same as every speaker.
Yeah.
But what they do well, I think very few speakers do as well. And certainly within that price range, unless you're going to spend, a gazillion pounds on Martin Logans or something Magnaplaners or something, then
big apogees or something,
huge pair of apogee calipers or something. Yeah, absolutely. No, they for the price, you can see exactly what Peter Walker, the designer, was trying to do with them, because they've got the most beautiful mid-range, haven't they?
They have
very liquid, very fluid. Amazing sounded.
Can I do a Peter Walker impression?
Yeah, of course you can, yes.
So he said, and he's obviously Quad's founder, that a system should be able to reproduce everything of value in a recording while minimising the irritations of poor ones.
What does that mean?
I don't know. So
can I do a Peter Walker?
Yeah,
well, I'll do a quote, but I won't do the impression because I wouldn't be anywhere near as good as you. But I don't know if this is true or not, but I'd love to think it was. When somebody said with the ESL 57s, which were the predecessors of these, when somebody said, "But Peter, they don't have any bass," apparently he said, "Well, just get a cardboard box and kick it in time to the music then." Which is just a brilliant quote, and I think he kind of realised the limitations.
Yeah,
but realised that he was also onto an absolute winner with this amazing mid-range and this beautiful sort of clear, open sound.
Absolutely. So when you look at the early reviews of the 63 in the early 80s when they came out, the frequency response is very interesting. So basically, normal people would have prepared a diagram. I'm just going to draw it in the air.
You just know it from memory.
So it's basically almost, if you start at the top, the high end. So nothing really above 12 kilohertz. It's sort of off the scale down. Then it then goes and it's absolutely flat to about 90, 80 hertz. And it's down to about minus 3 dB, 60 hertz, minus 3 dB, something like that. And then it kind of falls off again. But the point is, most speakers, if you look on a frequency response plot, they're kind of quite bumpy, especially often in the mid-band, which is just where you don't want it. So this is incredible. They really are very flat and neutral. There's no peaks or troughs in the middle of the frequency band where the ear is most sensitive.
Yeah, and look, but quite right too, because I mean, couldn't anybody take as long to make and design and bring a pair of speakers to market that happened with the 63s. I mean, they're called 63 because that's when the concept began.
Yeah.
And yet they didn't come to market till the early 80s.
Well, I'd say that's a shoddy work ethic, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's a lot of lunch breaks.
What was he doing?
Eating a lot, I reckon. Yeah, sort of on a sort of Arthur Dent scale. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sort of lunch break.
Maybe just like a long sleep, or
maybe a 10-year sleep,
suspended animation.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and if anyone knows what Peter Walker did,
10 years, 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, he's got that amazing flat response as a result of all of his efforts, and a huge round of applause as well, because I really, really love them.
Yeah.
The $1 million question for me, and I think you mentioned it earlier, is could they be your forever speakers?
Yeah.
And I think or are they just speakers that come out for Christmas?
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure at the moment, but I haven't felt the urge to switch my Lins back on since I bought them, and really enjoying playing around with them.
Yeah.
Makes reviewing easier because they're very neutral.
Yeah.
But also there's just one cable to plug in, as opposed to the active isobarics where you've got all sorts of different things going in and out of them. So,
also makes reviewing easier because they tell you what's actually going into them.
Yes.
Unlike a lot of speakers, many box loudspeakers, almost all box loudspeakers, which add awful lot of stuff, kind of thrumming and booming and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And all kinds of mid-range artifacts and so on. And of course with box loudspeakers as well, with multi-drive unit speakers, you've got the phase issues of the different drive units. So
and a cabinet.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the cabinet causing mayhem potentially, and you've got the phase issues of the drive units, which is, for example, why Yamaha with the NS1000 had a dome mid-range and a dome tweeter to have a kind of similar phase characteristics of both of those drive units.
Interesting.
And very few speakers do have identical tweeter and mid-range drivers in the sense of how they're constructed. So you've got basically listening, if you've got a three-way, your average three-way, you're listening to three different speakers in one, which have been very carefully trying to blend in using the crossovers, the crossover. And you've got, as you said, the cabinet joining in the party as well, haven't you?
I think if you've never heard an electrostatic loudspeaker, that's the first thing which you appreciate. Or actually, maybe let's turn that on its head. You realise actually how much noise the cabinets make in other loudspeakers.
Yep.
Because there is just none, and you kind of get what you get.
Yeah.
And they are flawed, no two ways about it. But that's one of the ways which they clearly are not.
Absolutely.
And really fantastic. But look, again, we talked about this. So the ways in which they don't quite perform as well as other loudspeakers. We were saying it's not insurmountable, is it? So we were saying you could get, like, for example, a nice little Rel subwoofer to blend in, just to sort of raise the bass a little bit. You could get some Townsend super tweeters. Again, just to sort of get that clarity right on the top end. And you made a really, really interesting point, which I'd never considered, which is if you had a small subwoofer and you just to sort of raise that bottom platform a bit, actually it means you can listen at lower levels. Because, and this is your words, not mine, but you said, if you turn up the reason why you turn up the volume is normally to get more bass and get more sort of oomph coming out. But if you've got a little subwoofer in the back, then you don't necessarily need to crank the volume up. And that's quite profound. I think that's really true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought about it either until I said
like Hi-Fi Riff, for example. Yes.
But, I mean, no. So I think actually using a sub with something like a quad electrostatic. I mean, I've had a number of quads over the years and played with subs, and just dialing them in so you can just about barely hear them, but you can hear them very, very slightly, rather than turning them up to kind of sort of max power mid-90s kind of Ford Cosworth rear parcel shell speaker level. So that has an effect which is almost like greater than the sum of its parts. So it gives you a kind of slightly visceral feel from the speaker without really hearing the bass particularly. And because of the very, very light drive unit, well, basically the film, the Mylar film, which the Electrostatic uses, is very light, so it's got super fast transients. So it picks up the kind of upper part of the bass really well, and the kind of harmonics coming off bass guitars and so on. So you get that really fast kind of upper bass harmonic from the Electrostatic, and a kind of physical oomph, a gentle oomph from the sub. So it really does work, I think.
And I think because essentially you're just moving a bit of cling film around, it doesn't really move huge quantities of air.
Yeah.
The air it moves is very accurate,
Yeah.
but not huge quantities. Hence, you don't really get that. But what it does, and again, what I've noticed, and you were talking about, is at low volumes you don't lose any lack of detail.
No.
It's quite something, because you know what it's like in pretty much every other loudspeaker. You've got to crank it up before you start really hearing things.
Yeah.
But with these at low volumes, it's absolutely amazing. So, perfect for if you live in a house with neighbours who you don't want to upset.
Yes.
As long as you've got 100-foot square living room, then you're absolutely fine, because they do take up a huge amount of space.
Yes.
Because they give out the same amount of volume pretty much behind them as they do in front of them, so you can't just put them against a wall. They've got to be quite a few feet out, and you've also got to play with the positioning quite a lot, because they are a little bit directional still. Nothing like the 57s, but still quite directional.
Yeah, and again, a lot of box speakers are quite directional as well, and things like tannoy dual concentrics that I've heard are pretty directional. So you can't really attack them too much for that.
No,
but I mean, in my house, when I've had those variations of those quads in my system, I've had them out roughly a foot from the back wall, which is closer perhaps than you might think.
Yes.
And a slightly towed in, as it were, slightly angled in, and you do get a little bit of bass reinforcement. You can, that can help matters if you're a sort of UB40 fan or a Gregory Isaacs fan.
Sure.
And you want to hear what's going on the bass guitar rather than the lead guitar. So you can kind of tune around the speaker. But I think one of the great things about the quad is that because the cabinet, as it were, the frame is pretty good on that. It's it's not very intrusive at all. And so when you're listening to conventional box speakers at low levels, you're getting that kind of thrum and boom from the cabinet. And that's kind of joining in with the music, and it can kind of overshadow the music itself. Whereas because the quads don't have that and such a noisy cabinet, you can take the volume down quite a lot and still enjoy the actual music rather than the kind of random resonances and so on that come from the cabinet. So and also even at low volumes they still image really well. I mean, I'm used to the Lins which don't really image. The music just tends to get stuck in the box. But with the quads it really does come out and you get that beautiful soundstage. We've talked about Alistair Robertson Aikman before, who founded SME. And I heard some stacked quad electrostatics in his listening room, and he hid them. We've talked about this before. He hid them behind these acoustically transparent curtains, which was really amazing effect because you couldn't see the speaker, so you didn't really know where the sound was coming from. And you've got this phenomenal soundstage. Actually, because you can see these massive, great big speakers, it's obvious where the music's coming from, so it actually lessens the soundstage a bit. But they do image beautifully. They really do image beautifully. And also listen to, I mean, I've only had them a week or so, but I've listened to all sorts of different types of music with different sources, and they just seem to be sort of universally good. With sort of all sorts of things. They're very flattering to all sorts of music. Does that make sense? So, absolutely. And they have very few of the vices of normal speakers, so you don't get particular treble beaming. You get this kind of spherical waveform kind of coming out. Again, I would, make a diagram, but I'll just use my hand. It's like that.
Thank you.
Like a kind of ripple.
Is that the noise it makes?
Okay. Yeah. So, It's a very technical demonstration there.
Yes,
I'm sure
very
everyone will be
impressed.
impressed.
Yes, in keeping with our production values.
Yes,
on Riff.
well, we do like to do the best for our viewers, Mike. So you basically got this kind of sound sort of beaming out like that, and it's not sort of squeezing out through 2 or 3 different drive units at the same time as you would in a conventional sense, and that's great. So it has so many advantages. But and what they do very well, actually, I found, is to show you how bad normal speakers are. The best thing about quad electrostatics is to remind you how wrong all other speakers are. But here's the clincher. So they do some things quite wrong as well.
Yes.
And so when you go back to other speakers, normal speakers, you then think, God, my conventional speakers, I've got, are rubbish, but hang on, I like the fact I can hear the bass line.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah.
so, there's it swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Always?
Yeah.
We talk about this for speakers. There's no perfect pair of speakers. If there was, we'd all have them. And, it's all about sort of what fits your taste. But these are definitely fitting mine. I'm really enjoying them at the moment. They've been a great thing to have and be part of.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're a sad old collector of hi-fi, this is a must-have in your collection, a pair of electrostatics.
What are you looking at me for?
Because you've got one.
So
only one that I know of as well. I dread to think what else is lurking in the background in your hi-fi museum.
No comment.
No.
But so you've rambled on about how great your speakers are for ages.
Yes.
I want to say the bad side of them. So they don't take volume.
No.
So
they don't.
When we listen to
They don't.
Listen to what did we hear? We tried Sade's Smooth Operator, that sort of 80s kind of classic dem track.
Yeah, Thomas Dolby.
Some Thomas Dolby, Flat Earth.
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. Listen to 50 Words for Snow by Kate Bush as well.
Yeah.
Vogue by Madonna.
Yes.
The Q sound.
That was your choice.
Thank you. Q sound version. If you haven't heard it, it's interesting because it's got this Q sound which makes you feel like you're sitting inside a pair of headphones.
Yes.
It's quite unusual. Yes, but so they don't take volume all that well.
No,
they don't take volume.
So
all that well.
they've got a I think I can't remember what Quad claimed as their maximum output level, but I think the stereophile review of when the ESL 63 first came out put it around 98 dB, which really isn't very loud.
No.
For headbanging Rush fans, and big heavy bass transients can cause the protection circuitry to trip on.
Yes.
That's they can actually trip at lower volumes than their maximum output level. So again, you find you play some kind of types of music quite loud and it's fine, but then you put some really heavy bass stuff on, and the protection circuitry will trip in at quite a lot lower level, and that's a real downer. So but it depends what you listen to, doesn't it?
It does. But I've tried some Rush with them, and as long as you don't get too loud, it still sounds absolutely lovely. They still retain those gorgeous characteristics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased with them, actually. Really, really pleased. And I think they're a bit of a hi-fi bargain.
Yeah.
I would say buyer beware. I was very lucky. I got mine from a guy called Simon Taylor, who's from Abingdon in Oxfordshire, who rebuilds them.
Yeah.
Does a great job. Really lovely man as well. Really top bloke. Great system.
Yeah.
Big sort of high-end, Ricardo-based sort of system. So
absolute sound
system. Anyway, we digress a little bit. Buyer beware, because they are quite expensive to repair if you blow them up.
Yeah, so, and the panels do degrade over time.
They do.
Physically.
They do.
So you will need to get, if your quads that you buy don't have issues, then they will have at some point, just through sheer wear and tear and age.
Absolutely.
You kind of, when the panels start to go, you kind of get like a slightly fizzy kind of crackling sound.
Without anything plugged into them as well, without any music going through them, you get a bit of a fizz, don't you? At the low end. So there we are. Let's do a riff. Let's do a riffometer.
Yeah.
Let's do a riffometer
it's really
on the quads.
Difficult, isn't it?
No, it's really easy.
So I'll do a riff for someone who likes kind of easy listening music and classical music, and that would be 10.
Yes. Okay.
Whereas
We'll leave it there. No, we'll just leave it there. That's fine.
Someone who likes rock, heavy metal, and disco and techno, 5. So, Mike, how about you?
I just think they're great. They're complete. They are flawed, but they're flawed geniuses.
Yeah.
And I quite like the odd flawed genius. I'm going to give them 9.5.
Wow.
And I'm going to save the other half a point for when I get my Rel subwoofer and my Townsend super tweeters to go with it.
Yes.
So fully invested. Yeah. And look, on that amazing note, can you believe it? I know we've got electrostatic loudspeakers in the lounge. Wow. Thank you so much for watching this episode of I am of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. We look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.